This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
This next day, this May 6th event. Now, of course, there's a lot of wrestling matches. You guys ran Denver, North Carolina. You ran a high school gym in South Carolina. And Championship Wrestling from Florida was really loaded with your whole roster. Players there working with Jimmy Garvin. Dusty is working on that show. Ricky and Robert are there. But something pretty major happens on May 6, 1987. There's an article in the old Charlotte Observer that says that Jim Crockett Promotions had purchased the Universal Wrestling Federation effective May 1st. Now, this is something I want to talk a little bit about because we remember talking back in March of 1987, how important of a moment it was to see Vince McMahon put together WrestleMania 3 and how really Crockett Promotions felt the pressure to try to keep up and compete at that point. And WrestleMania 3 was by far the biggest wrestling show of all time. And now they're on the march to grow their syndicated network. And this was really the battle of syndication in this era. Of course, the WWF has Superstars and Challenge. Both of those are syndicated shows. But man, nothing beats the TBS show that you guys have. So you've got worldwide, you've got pro, but you're trying to expand that footprint. And in my conversations with Jim Crockett, he said he felt like in order to really compete on a national basis with Vince, he had to have the right number of channels. And he forgot what number of channels it was. He guessed maybe it was 100. But ultimately, that's what leads him to make the decision to purchase Bill Watts. Now, as the legend goes, and Lord knows I wasn't there, but this is rumor and innuendo, that perhaps Jim Ross maybe brokered a deal on behalf of Mr. Watts by pitting Mr. Crockett saying, hey, if you don't want it, we can always sell it to Vince, which of course made Crockett jump at the chance. And of course, Crockett then eventually had a little buyer's remorse. He was stuck with the big lease. He was stuck with a lot of overhead, and he had this whole new roster, which in theory, for his new idea of the wrestling network, could have been a big idea to have UWF stars versus Jim Crockett stars. So it could have almost looked like a cover of a Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine. We know that didn't really work as well as we hoped. And a generation later, it wouldn't really work with WCW and the WWF either. But what do you remember hearing about, wait a minute, we bought Watts' territory? Was that something that you were excited about? Or did you start to say, somebody come in for our spot? How's that going to affect our money? What's the thinking amongst the boys at the time?
Well, even those of us that weren't that concerned with the inner workings of the office, we did know that, what are you buying? The territory was on its ass.
Right.
It's not like they were on fire and you had a crew of guys that were red hot, JYD in his time, Ted DiBiase, Jim Duggan, all those guys, Mr. Olympia, all the guys that were red hot at different times in Bill Watts' territory. That's kind of what people are expecting. You didn't have that. You had a company that was floundering because, let's face it, WWE, which was WWF at the time, and Jim Crockett Promotions had the predominance of all the talent that was available, all the top talent. That would be my estimation. So, it was like, okay, we didn't hear the numbers back then of what the purchase price was, but we knew it was going to come out of the check, and it was going to come out of all of our checks to pay for that. And we even knew then, what are you buying? And as it turned out, we were right. You bought nothing, towns that were dead.
Was there any talent when you looked at that roster that you thought, hey, I don't know about the business end, but I know I can have some good matches with that guy?
Tony Schiavone here to tell you about the greatest value in the history of our great sport. AdFreeShows.com. Get every episode of What Happened When and all of Conrad's other podcasts early, ad-free, and on video for as low as $9 a month. That's the price of a Starbucks coffee for hundreds of hours of video and audio content each month. That's not all. AdFreeShows.com is home to exclusive bonus content, like interactive events where you get to ask me anything during our Ask Tony live events. And if you're a Top Guy member, we got to hang out for the entire weekend in Chicago at Top Guy Weekend recently. Did I mention there's also happy hour every other Sunday with my dear, good, close personal friend, Rebel? You call yourself a wrestling fan and haven't signed up for ad-free shows yet, you a lie. Sign up today at adfreeshows.com.
Well, I mean, you had Steve Williams, I mean, I don't even remember who was on that roster. You got any names that pop in your head?
Well, I mean, I know everybody seemed to be excited about, the idea that they were going to have Doc come in, Terry Taylor, obviously Sting's going to come in. I mean, Sting's going to go on to be one of the biggest stars in the promotion, and he's part of the acquisition, along with guys like, Rick Steiner. There's a lot of big talent at the time, but none of it really jumped off the page to you at the time, huh?
Well, you looked at him and you went, God, how do you look at Rick Steiner without going, God, he's impressive. Sting, he's impressive, sure. Steve Williams, I broke in with Steve Williams. I knew exactly, what you're looking at there. I mean, the guy was a beast, but you didn't have established stars that were selling tickets. If Bill Watts' territory was on fire, like it once was, you wouldn't have been able to pry it out of his hands. Obviously. And that was just common sense.
What'd you think of a guy like Chris Adams? We haven't spent any time talking about him. Probably the innovator of the super kick, one of the most popular moves used these days. What can you tell us about gentleman Chris Adams, if anything?
Yeah, I never was around him very much. There was probably a few times we were in the same dressing room, but he was a very good worker. And, the fact that he had the strong English accent made him different. And sometimes just being different and being able to work is all you really need. I think he was exclusive probably as far as being a star to the Texas area, Dallas territory. I don't know how world renowned he was or how far Chris Adams' reach was as far as how he was viewed by wrestling fans, but he was definitely a good hand.
What about Terry Gordy, another name that's really synonymous with Mid-South? Is he somebody you had any time with or experience with, or did you just know him through the magazines?
I just knew about him, and like everybody else had watched him, and I knew Terry Gordy was the real deal. He's a big 300-pound guy that could get around that ring like a 200-pounder. He was smart. He knew the business. He knew the psychology of the business. He was durable. I don't remember ever hearing about, Terry Gordy got hurt, he's going to be out X number of months. I don't remember ever hearing that. And, the Freebirds, they had that unusual clique of guys that they all played off of each other. They were all different. And, they got over. And when you're part of something that was over that strong, you knew Terry Gordy was the real deal.
You're going to inherit a bunch of other talent who went through there eventually, too, like Ron Simmons. And let's talk about the next day, May 9th. We're back doing a TV taping, WTBS Studios. It's a 6-man, Tully, Arn, yourself, and Lex, of course, taking on Rocky King, Howell Moore, and Larry Stevens. Howell Moore, not a name I could have picked out of a lineup. Any good Howell Moore stories you can share with us?
Now, I don't know who Howell Moore is. Why do you do this? No disrespect to the human being. That's just one that I don't remember.
No, but I know you'll remember Todd Champion, though. We're starting to see that name pop up more and more here. Boy, he had a longer run than I remember. I mean, it feels like he was more of a WCW guy, but here he was, here in Jim Crockett Promotions in 1986.
Well, I'm sure. And he was there to, do business. He wasn't featured. He wasn't part of the crew. He was just a guy that came in to do television. And David Isley, great. Tommy Angel, two great hands, two good guys. I've kind of kept up with David Isley over the years, and Tommy Angel was always a very talented guy. And I don't remember, this must have been the time that Chris Champion, we're talking about Todd Champion? Excuse me.
Yeah, Todd Champion. Yeah, I know that he's working primarily enhancement, and I think he's going to have a little run in Japan. But when he comes back in 91, it feels like, he's getting a bit of a push in WCW. But that's not what we're seeing here.
Yeah, I mean, we all have beginnings.
Yes.
And every one of us pretty much started out the same way. I started out the same way, Todd did. I was a tackling dummy on TV. Thank God it didn't last long. And like I said, he was such a big, impressive guy. He was a whopper. He would get your attention. And when he came back later on, it would be a little bit of a different spot.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money, it's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.